Football Tribe channel. Robert Kesa just so that we can get it all started here on the Football Tribe UG channel, and we discuss everything the Premier League for what we just witnessed there, all the action that we witnessed from a match day 33 so far. We've just been completed the final game of the evening, in which flew away Newcastle in a 4-1 thumping. Pretty much not what predicted, but it's a result that was possible given the way in which things have gone for them in recent times as far as Villa's form was concerned at the Villa Park. But welcome back to the channel. Thank you to all our new subscribers. Thank you guys. Really appreciate giving us the subscription. And then thank you to all those that are watching our content, those of you that do watch these live broadcasts, and then those that do watch the broadcasts much later, those who check out our short section. We do not take your time for granted. We do really appreciate your time and effort. So gather on here and we speak all matters of Premier League. Of course, there was a sensational game in the Spanish La Liga between Barcelona and Celta Vigo, in which Barcelona were 3-1 down by the 62nd minute, thereabout. And then they came back from that, squad in quick succession to equalize between the 65th and 68th minute, thereabout. And then got, I think, a 90th minute winning goal, a penalty by Rafinha, whose contribution overall in the Spanish La Liga has now gone to 5. That's for goals and assists combined, and 52 across the entire campaign in all competition and all that. So gather here. I'm waiting for you guys to join the broadcast, sort that out. But like I said, our efforts will start in the Premier League for match day 33, where we did witness Brentford thrash Brighton and Hove Albion by 4-2 in today's earlier games, those games that did kick off at 5 p.m. East African time. The goal is that was so at the Legit Stadium. Brian Mbeumo was one of those on target with a brace on the evening or on the afternoon, depending on what time zone you do find yourself in, as Brentford beat against Brighton and Hove Albion by 4-2. So it was Brian Mbeumo with 2 goals there, Johan Visa, the other on target, of course, as well as Christian Nogard, that did a complete jumping for Brentford. Of course, minute. So that the match favors. But Brentford find themselves in the lead in as early as 9 minutes before David equalized in the stoppage time of the first stanza of the game. So it was 1-1 at halftime. Then quickly, 3 minutes into the second half, Brian Mbeumo was once again on target to restore Brentford's lead, and then 10 minutes later, Johan Visa was then, of course, scoring 3-1 with Brian Mbeumo providing the assist. So Brian Mbeumo had 2 goals and 1 assist, and then Johan Visa had 1 goal and an assist. So really very impressive contributions there. Thank you that have joined the broadcast. Your time is much appreciated. Like I said, Robert Kesa is my name. If you're new to the channel, kindly leave me a subscription so that we can continue to go and hit that 1,000 subscribers mark. Anyways, still continuing. Like I said, Johan Visa was on target to make it 3-1. João Pedro, of course, gets a red card in the 61st minute, and then Kawu Mitoma scores to pull another back for the visitors, making it 3-2. But Christian Nogard in the 95th minute was on target there to complete the 4-2 drubbing for Brentford, inflicting it against Brighton and Hove Albion there. So looks like, I mean, Bradford, I think their most confirmed player is Yohan Wissa. I think his personal tally now goes to what? 18 goals? I think 18 goals so far this season. It's been quite a very successful campaign for him. And yet, Yohan Wissa has been the other on target. Is it Gilly? Yes, Gilly. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Much appreciated. Thank you for your comment there. So in the other game, Crystal Palace were forced into a goalless draw against Bournemouth in that fixture. I do know that Crystal Palace did suffer a red card shortly before halftime for, I think, Christian Richards there. Of course, it was a double booking that led that. However, Crystal Palace were able to hold that out and at least salvage a point in the game, especially on the back of their midweek thumping on Wednesday when they lost to Newcastle by 5 goals to nil. Those goals scored, of course, Alexander Isak, Fabian Schär, and then there was an own goal by the defender. That's Mark Gay. I think Kevin Barnes was one of those that did score in midweek for Newcastle as they thrashed Crystal Palace, but they did recover from that. Everton did suffer defeat again at the hands of Manchester City. Unfortunately, it looked like Everton were destined to secure a point in this particular game because goals were really not coming for either side. They were really not coming. Of course, Jordan Pickford had been forced into a few comfortable saves here and there, just as much as Stefan Ortega on the opposite side. That's for Man City. They've all had some really comfortable saves in the game. And you thought while Manchester City, in terms of pressing-wise or going forward, appeared to be having an edge over Everton, the game seemed to be destined for a draw, and yet O'Reilly had other ideas when he scored in the 84th minute, and then of course the substitute that was in Mateo Kovacic did score in the 92nd minute with Ilkay Gundogan providing the assist there to complete a 2-0 victory for Manchester City, to ensure that they secured all 3 points to brighten their pursuit of finishing in the top 5 ahead of, because like I keep saying, there are 4 teams battling for that slot for those spots, basically the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place to finish in the top 5 so as to qualify for the next season's UEFA Champions League. It's not to say that Arsenal was 2nd place on the Premier League table already in the clear or have already confirmed their slot, but at least their odds are looking much better as opposed to the other 4 teams that are in that lot, including, is it 4 or 5 teams? Of course, you have Newcastle in there, you have Nottingham Forest, you do have Manchester City, you do have Chelsea, you do have Aston Villa. So 5 teams, they are vying for competing for those other 3 slots that do complete to complete the top 5. So then away to the London Stadium, West Ham did beat up against Southampton West Ham and Southampton were involved in a 1-1 draw on the day. I thought that in our preview that maybe West Ham would win this game, even when they do not really have much to play for. That as Graham Potter tries to get the best out of this West Ham side that he did inherit from Julian Lopetegui, that they would secure victory against an already relegated Southampton, who do not have really anything to play for beyond, trying to finish off the season in a less disappointing manner than they have, showcased themselves throughout the entire campaign. And that game was goalless at halftime. Gerard Bowen there coming on to score in the 47th minute. So that's into the second half. Nicholas Fulcru providing the assist for that one, while Ugo Kwechuku did score to equalize. And by the way, guess what? This goal came late on in the game in the 93rd minute. That's in stoppage time to cancel out West Ham's lead at a time when they thought they had literally secured all 3 points. But like the game of football, it's never done until it's over. Pretty much, we saw that on Thursday night, as Manchester United beat up against Lyon by 5-4. So in a game of football, it's not over until you hear the final whistle. Pretty much what literally also happens in transfers. You get players doing medicals at one club and then ending up signing for other clubs. So until the player has raises up that chart, has put pen to paper, they are never used already. And so the 3 points were never really those of West Ham because, Ugo Okechukwu had other ideas in securing a point for Southampton. And then, of course, in the late kickoff, arguably, I think one of the best games we've witnessed this Saturday from match day 33 of the Premier League was Aston Villa beating up against Newcastle by 4-1, a side that they had not beaten up against in the last 3 meetings. Like we spoke about in the preview, Newcastle had beaten up against Aston Villa in the last 3 consecutive games. And coming into this particular fixture, Newcastle were on a 5 consecutive match winning streak as far as the last 5 Premier League games were concerned, including beating up against Manchester United by 4-1 last weekend, beating up against Crystal Palace in midweek by 5-0, among some of the most recent results. In comparison, Aston Villa themselves were not in bad form because their last loss had come against Crystal Palace when they lost by 4-1. So they had won their previous 4 games out of the last 5 in the Premier League, including beating up against teams like Southampton by 3-0 last weekend, among other results they were in. But so given the form that Newcastle had, the form that Aston Villa had, especially in recent times at the Villa Park, where they had not lost in the last 18 games, winning 12 and drawing 6, then that combined with what Newcastle had been able to do, winning, I think, 9 out of the last 10 fixtures. I think, no, not that, but given what Newcastle had been able to achieve in the recent times, especially ever since winning that Carabao Cup when they beat up against Liverpool. So you had 2 teams in incredible form. Head to head, Newcastle had the advantage, of course, having beaten up against Aston Villa by 4 times in the last 5. In the last 5 meetings, Aston Villa last beating up against Newcastle in April 2023 by 3-1, I think. So clearly, it didn't paint the picture that it was a game that maybe Newcastle would run away with. Neither was it painting the picture that Aston Villa would run away with it. However, and it's on that basis that our prediction here on Footballtribeug was a 2-all draw for both sides. However, I also did mention that whoever scores first will potentially run away with the game. Both teams had played some, games in midweek. Aston Villa. Hello, bro. Yes, Babu Vikash. Yes, Babu Vikash. Thank you for tuning to the broadcast. Hit that subscribe button so that we can continue to grow. But your time, thank you for tuning to the broadcast. You're much appreciated. So, like I was saying, I'd mentioned it in our preview earlier on in today's broadcast. For those of you that were with us in those hours, that whoever scores first would the game, because usually that's how it's played out in the first couple of fixtures. And Aston Villa drew first blood through Watkins. So the internet glitch there, but we're back. So, like as early as 33 seconds into the game, Oli Watkins had fired Aston Villa into the lead. But then Fabian Schär made amends when he scored with a brilliant header in the 18th minute, heading that ball in between the legs of Emiliano Martinez to restore parity. But overall, the first half, it was everything dominated by Aston Villa. You really thought that Newcastle felt lucky to go level into halftime. They looked tired. The players like Bruno Guimaraes, players like Alexander Isak, they were really not having a good day in office. They looked to play with lower energy as opposed to what we are accustomed to from Newcastle in recent times. Of course, it was Jason Tindo on the touchline for Newcastle as their manager now continues to nurse pneumonia in the hospital. So both sides had played in midweek, but Villa rotated some of their players. Marcus Rashford did not start because he started midweek as they beat up against PSG by 3-2. Of course, they had to come from 2 goals down in that particular fixture. So he did start on the bench. Players who did not start in midweek, like Marcus Asensio, did start this game. Rashford started on the bench. Oli Watkins did start in midweek, so he started this one. Amadou Onana, that one came off the bench. So Jacob Ramsey came off the bench. So there was really a couple of changes there for Aston Villa to make sure that they had fresh bodies in this particular game. And indeed, that really was pretty evident in the way they played. Players like Tyrone Mings, they did not start that midweek game because it was Pau Torres in that few changes that were made overall in that game. So that's how Villa ended up running away with the game pretty much in the second half and putting 3 more goals past the Nick Pope in goal. Ian Matson scored in the 64th minute to restore Aston Villa's lead with quite in spectacular fashion, because the way he runs from near the center line to come and put himself in position where he played in by Oli Watkins was quite really impressive there. And it was 2-1 in the 73rd minute. Dunban unfortunately deflected the ball across into the back of his own net at the near post there. So it turned out to be an own goal by Dunban that made it 3-1 for Aston Villa. And just 2 minutes later, in fact, I think it was 1 minute and 44 seconds thereabout between the 3rd goal and the 4th goal that was scored by Amadou Onana there. Morgan Rogers providing the assist in that fixture. So Aston Villa dominated all affairs in this absolute for the top 5 finish on the Premier League table. Remember, we did come in this fixture with Newcastle standing 3rd on the Premier League table with 59 points, and they have been able to retain that slot even despite the defeat that they've just suffered, while Aston Villa, who came in this particular fixture, sitting in 7th place. Yes, that victory puts them slightly higher. They moved to 6th place with 57 points. Initially, they were at 54 points on level with Chelsea, who were above them, I think. If I stand to be corrected, no, in fact, they were above Chelsea. They were above Chelsea. They don't really seem to have moved inches, but they are now level on points with Nottingham Forest, who are 5th with a similar number of points at 57. So here is what the Premier League table standings look like. Of course, Liverpool 76 points. Those ones do play tomorrow. Liverpool are at home against Leicester City. I think they are away from home against Leicester City in tomorrow's fixture. So really, that game that I do think that they will win. Yes, they are away from home against Leicester City in tomorrow's fixture, but they do lead the table. Like I keep saying, they only need 2 wins to be confirmed Premier League champions. But if Arsenal do not win tomorrow and then Liverpool win, then clearly tomorrow Liverpool could be crowned champions as early as tomorrow. So Arsenal will be looking to extend that period a little further before Liverpool are announced champions, because it's a 13-point gap between Liverpool and a 2nd place Arsenal that have 63 points, while in that place is Newcastle at 59 points. Manchester City, following that victory against Everton, leaves them 1 point behind Newcastle. That's at 58 points in 4th place, while Nottingham Forest occupy 5th with 57 points, level with a 6th place Aston Villa on a similar number of points there. Chelsea, who do play tomorrow at 4 p.m., who are involved in the London Derby, a very difficult game for them against Fulham, which, by the way, I do get the feeling that Chelsea could lose given how they've been playing in recent times, including losing that midweek game that game on Thursday by 2-1 in the reverse fixture of their quarterfinals of the UEFA Conference League. So there's a bit of question marks there in regards to Chelsea's recent form. So last weekend they were involved in a 2-all draw against an Ipswich side, Ipswich Town side. Not that Ipswich are any lesser of an opponent, but you think that a team that is trying to fight for a top 5 finish to qualify for the UEFA Champions League would do much better to beat up against a team that is really been battling relegation almost all season. So in 7th place is a Chelsea, and then of course Bournemouth, who were involved in that goalless draw with Crystal Palace, do occupy the 8th. Fulham in there. In fact, if Fulham win tomorrow, if they are able to beat Chelsea, because they are currently at 48 points, they could move within 3 points behind Chelsea. So there's a lot of motivation for Fulham to go ahead and try and beat Chelsea at Craven Cottage tomorrow. Then Brighton and Hove Albion are in 10th place with that result. They are being beaten up against by Brentford, who occupy 11th place, and basically the rest of the table really didn't change much. Of course, we all know that Manchester United are 14th. That's one of the big teams on page 2. Tottenham Hotspurs are 5th, just a point behind Manchester United, that kind of thing. So let's not even dwell much on that. But tomorrow's fixtures, like I said, Fulham are at home against Chelsea at 4 p.m. East African time, while Ipswich Town will be at home against Arsenal with a similar time of kick-off. And then Manchester United will be up against Wolverhampton Wanderers still at 4 p.m., while Leicester City at 6:30 p.m. will be at home against Liverpool. So just briefly, maybe from the Spanish La Liga in today's fixture, like I was telling you about, open the scoring for Barcelona in the 12th minute, but Iglesias there scored a hat-trick in the 15th minute. Of course, it was 1-1 at halftime, 52nd and 60th there to put Celta Vigo in a 3-1 lead. Dani Olmo scored in the 64th minute to pull another back. Rafinha assisted Dani Olmo. Then he scored in the 68th minute, just 4 minutes later, there to make it 3-all. And then, like I said, in the 90th minute, he scored a penalty that won Barcelona. They extended their lead at the summit of the Spanish La Liga table to, I think, 7 points as they wait for Real, who are yet to play their game. So it's 73 points for Barcelona and 66 points for Real Madrid in second place, while Atletico Madrid at 64 points. Place Athletic Bilbao, who Manchester United have a date with at the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League, occupy 4th place on the Premier League, on the Spanish La Liga table, and that was the look of things from that side as far as fixtures were concerned. Atletico Madrid, their game is actually right on right now against Las Palmas. If they do win, they could go level 2 points with Real Madrid. In the German Bundesliga, you had Bayern Munich beating up against Heidenheim by 4-0 as one of the key fixtures there. Union Berlin in a 4-all draw against Stuttgart, while Werder Bremen, better of Bochum, beating them by 0-0. RB Leipzig was involved in a 1-all draw against Holstein, while Mainz and Wolfsburg were also engaged in a 2-all draw. Freiburg beat up against Hoffenheim by 3-2. In the Italian Serie A, one of the title contenders in Napoli beat up against Monza by 1-0, while AS Roma in the 33rd minute are leading Hellas Verona by 1-0. Lecce were beaten by Como by 3-0. Como under the charges of former Arsenal, former Barcelona, and former Chelsea midfielder Francesc Sola Fabregas. So with that victory against Monza, Napoli are now on level with points with the leaders there in the Italian Serie A at 71 points apiece. While I would want to know, of course, Como won't be relegated. They've done really quite well. They are in 13th place. with 39 points after 33 games played. There, Thierry Henry, who is a minority shareholder. Remember, Cesc Fabregas is also a shareholder in Como, and Thierry Henry is a minority shareholder in Como also. Was speaking earlier on this week and saying that they've, I think, mathematically achieved their objective, which was to avoid relegation, and then they will look to build onto whatever gains that they do get this season to move on and pursue bigger objectives next season. So Francesc Sola Fabregas there taking charge of a team in which he has shares. They had signed Rafael Varane when he left Manchester United, but he suffered a very long-term injury, and I think his contract had to be cancelled at the time. So, but to complete the top four, Atalanta at 10 points behind second place Napoli, while Juventus complete the top four there at 59 points. Of course, you all know that Juventus had to sack Thiago Motta there to Brighton. Their chances of even qualifying for Europe next season. Anyways, that's it for me here at Footballtribeug. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Tomorrow's games, I do not know whether I'll be able to do a broadcast in the morning hours, but all I can say is happy Easter to you all, to all the Christians out there. Wish you a happy one. But if we do get time, we'll find maybe a moment to speak all matters football ahead of tomorrow's fixtures. We could just get on and and you let me know what your thoughts will be on tomorrow's fixtures. Yes, we've already done that preview, but maybe it wouldn't hurt to speak a few things more if time does allow us. But if it doesn't, then we will review the results in the aftermath of those 5 games. Is it 5 games or 4 games? I think 4 games tomorrow, and then the other game will come on Monday, I think involving Nottingham Forest up against Tottenham Hotspurs. So keep it glued on your screens, and we'll keep you abreast with the latest from the Premier League prior to the end of the season. But if you're new, do not forget to subscribe so that we can continue to grow. You're all much appreciated. Stay blessed for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.